Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another video. We are going to be discussing this wild and crazy Aquarius new moon in this video. This period of time in the astrology of August, I really hotspotted as one of the crispier parts of 2024. Probably the Mars Uranus on Algol that we had in July was definitely a hotspot as well. What makes this particular full moon a little bit different is that it really does set off the longer range cycle that we will see of Jupiter and Saturn way into 2025. So this is going to be a tricky lunation to really kind of nail or wrap our heads around, just because there's so much going on with it. But before I try and give this full moon a little justice, I do want to let you know that at the end of this month, I'm going to be giving a little bit more of a casual talk, a conversation about Neptune in Aries. A lot of people are really curious about how to try and delineate this cycle and what it might mean collectively, what it might mean personally, and how it's going to be a stark contrast to the energy of Neptune in Pisces. So if you're curious about that, you're wanting to get a little bit ahead of the curve in how to interpret that, either for yourself or for clients, or just to sort of wrapping your head around the different energy of Neptune for the next 14 or so years, do tune into it. I'll pop the link below where you can sign up and register for that. If you can't attend the live call, it is going to be recorded. There'll also be Q&A stuff as well. So if you are really concerned, if you've got, say, for example, very early degree cardinal planets and what that might mean for you, yeah, you're welcome to sign up for that and find out more about it. And hopefully see you there as well. So before we kind of get into this lunation, I want to share a little story with you. And I think this might help you try and maybe encapsulate what we're dealing with here. This story was just sort of a little thing that my very first astrology teacher, who's long passed sadly, shared with us in class one time. And I don't think this was original to her, because I have heard it maybe once or twice over the past 20 years of doing astrology. And this was the idea of, imagine that we're all together in a room and it's quite cold outside and the heating busted. And so in a short space of time, the temperature dropped. And so we're all a little nippy, and then the cardinal person in the room decides to try and do something about it. So they leap out of their chair, they're playing with the control panel of the air conditioning unit and trying to fix the problem. So that's what cardinals do. They leap into action and get things moving. The fixed person, however, is sitting there in their chair. Well, that shouldn't have happened. And they are not really too pleased that the room ambience has shifted. And then, of course, the immutable people will probably open up their bag, realize, hey, I've got a jumper, a sweater, if you're American, and they just pop that on. So they will just roll with the punches of whatever changes happen. They may not decide to go all in and try and fix the problem. They just adapt with it. They may not like it, but they'll adapt. So if we keep some of those ideas in mind, this may help you move through this lunation period. The cardinal action has already taken place. Okay, so we've already dealt with something that is, the orientation of change, something being shifted, and now we move into the fixed and the mutable under this lunation. And that's going to really sort of determine how we navigate this space. And so I'm trying to think about this lunation cycle, and what's coming down the pipeline as a result of it is fixed change. The change is fixed. We can't sort of, the train's left the station, so to speak. So we can't really stop what's been put in place, but we can adapt to the changes. And when we're aware of the change happening, when we don't resist it, or we don't try and fight back on it. So it's changing, but how can we navigate that space? So when we think about a full moon in general, it's this big silver spotlight that will set something off. Full moons bring clarity, they bring awareness. They can bring a little bit of drama, of course, because it's, the heightened emotion around things. But it definitely brings a turning point, makes things clear. Sometimes that clarity is not what we always want to see, but 9 times out of 10, we're better off for seeing it rather than being rigid or head in the sand stuff. It's like, okay, we know what's happening now. We can either stay rigid and fixed if we choose to, or we can adapt and change and try and survive whatever changes are coming our way. So those fixed energies will tend to whinge and complain a lot of the time when things are in a state of change. They're not fond of it. We all know that. So this full moon, I'm going to bring up the screen here. This full moon is in an exact square to the planet Uranus. So we've got the sun is at 27 Leo, the moon is at 27 Aquarius, sort of 15 minutes. And if we take a look at Uranus, it is at 27 degrees of Taurus and 11 minutes. So it's super, super tight to this lunation. It doesn't really get any tighter than that as far as a square aspect is concerned. Also, keep in mind that Uranus hasn't been at 27 degrees for a great deal of time. It only moved to the position of 27 earlier this month. So, as far as Uranus's transit through Taurus is concerned, it too is breaking new ground, breaking new energy. So, if you do have planets around 27 degrees of the fixed signs in particular, this is going to be your first real rodeo, if you like, of this Uranus energy. Yes, it's been in Taurus for a long time, so you've probably felt the rumbles of this, but it's not until you get really close that something starts to happen, whether the anxiety gets turned up a notch, that cat on a hot tin roof type energy, feeling a little bit less stable, maybe a little bit frustrated because you're wanting to change. Something's got to give, but maybe nothing is. Maybe too much is happening and you're trying to find a sense of control or stability through that change. We can see change as an opponent to us, something that is going to really ruffle our feathers or what have you. But Uranus, I've just put a post on Twitter or X about the idea of some storms come through to clear our path. They're not all disruptive for disruption's sake. Sometimes we have to have a little bit of chaos and change in our life so we know what freedom feels like, what liberation feels like. Uranus also brings some novelty into the piece. This idea of something being fresh, new, or different. And when we're dealing with the fixed idea of change, sometimes that can be, well, if I just change this one thing and then everything will go back to being how I wanted it to be. But really, Uranus is more like an ongoing process of change. Experiment with this and figure out, well, did that thing work? Maybe it did. Maybe you only have to make one significant change and everything feels better. Maybe you have to go through a little bit of a longer or an ongoing process of change, to experiment, to go back to the drawing board. Did this work? No. Well, maybe I have to try something new. So change isn't always just this one-off, one-hit wonder type of energy. Change more often than not is a process. Of course, there are times where we do have just this one thing is sometimes all it takes, but a lot of times it can be a process. So when we're thinking about a full moon in Aquarius, it's a full moon in an air sign, fixed air, so challenge ideas that are fixed or rigid or innovative, but rigid in that innovation. This is the change we're going to have, and that's all that we're going to have type of thing. Whereas Uranus is really kind of challenging that. Let's continue to think outside the box. Let's continue to explore new ideas. So it is going to be a little bit like that. If you found yourself in a state of rigidity around a certain idea or a certain topic, Uranus might be giving you a rather firm tap on the shoulder and saying, hey, maybe there's something else you've yet to consider or something else that you need to change. So in the midst of this lunation, there's also so much other features going on. So we've got that very tight fixed square that's totally linked into the lunation. But we also have to go back to sort of basic astrology here. Who's the ruler of this full moon? And it's Saturn. Saturn is in mutable Pisces. So Saturn is already fluid and flexible, trying to maybe get something solid out of something that's very, I know this isn't a word, but unsolid, very oceanic. Okay, so Saturn can be a little bit slippery in Pisces, those boundaries, the rules, the limitations, they are fluid and permeable. And so not only is Saturn in Pisces, retrograde is a little bit of a feature to think about with that, but its ruler is Jupiter and it's also forming the square. So there is a level of expansion, of growth, of possibility and optimism and curiosity there. So there's just so much to this lunation that is, there may be a temptation to stay fixed. There may be a temptation to want to stay within your box of whatever Aquarius might mean for you in terms of your house position. But then we can look to Jupiter square the ruler of this lunation and go, well, maybe there's something else. Maybe I need to challenge what I always thought was true. So it's really important to also not think black and white with this particular lunation. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Compromise is possible. Okay, so in addition with this Saturn Jupiter square, we've also got Venus making a square to that as well. So more mutability come through. And Venus and Jupiter, yes, they're in a square. Yes, they're both in signs that they are challenged by, both in positions of either detriment or fall. In their essence, Jupiter and Venus are trying to bring a solution forward. They may not be very equipped to bring a solution forward, but there is this suggestion of compromise. If you can remain adaptable, if you can remain hopeful and optimistic and actually want a solution, even if that solution isn't the best one that is possible. So the ruler of this lunation is in a fixed square to mutable Jupiter in Gemini, and of course, opposing Venus. So this may be a question of differing desires. Venus in Virgo may be seeking a more perfect solution or how she wants things. Whereas Saturn is not even sure what he wants, I don't think, too much in Pisces. So this may also be the differing desires, a question of values, what one person desires versus what one other person or entity has the capacity to provide. That being said, though, Venus really loves Pisces. So she's trying real hard here to be that mediator, to be that problem solver, especially in the sign of Virgo. For some people, they might be seeing this in respect to Venus ruled things, friendships, relationships, stuff to do with women, beauty, art, even money to a certain extent. Now, all roads lead to Rome, as they say, and so much of the energy of this lunation, Venus being ruled by Mercury, Jupiter being ruled by Mercury, really does lead us back to where we all started, back with the full moon as Mercury moves into the Cazimi position. Well, they've just had their Cazimi, I should say, with Mercury retrograde in Leo. And so a Cazimi in of itself, yes, Mercury is still retrograde and there are those challenges there. But what the Cazimi can bring forward is, yes, that light bulb moment, because keep in mind, this is also squaring Uranus. So there's just so much going on here. I'm sorry, I'll just bring that right drawing back up in Zoom. So Mercury itself is just passing through a square with Uranus. So this isn't the first one. So this retrograde moment with the Cazimi squaring Uranus may be that aha moment. Okay, I've been trying to think of a solution, trying to think of a way out of a problem. And there might be that light bulb moment, that out of the blue idea, suggestion, piece of information, or an exchange of data, or whatever the case may be in relationship to Mercury, or whatever the Mercury retrograde problem that you may be facing. There is that breakthrough moment. Now, because Mercury is retrograde, it's switched sides with the sun now, and it's going to start to separate from the sun and rise as a morning star. So Mercury now is refreshed and renewed and reborn by the solar light of the sun. And this does show that there's a way out of that Mercury retrograde now. So it's almost as though, yeah, well, things are still messy, still things are not working exactly the way they should or could be, but I've got that piece of information. I've just got to kind of ride out that tide. I've just got to implement things, tie off loose ends. But I do think there is a lot of this lunation that there's the little pieces of it that will also lead to the bigger pieces of it. And so some of these bigger pieces really do relate to that Jupiter-Saturn square. This is the first one. So we have Saturn is retrograde now. And then I think next month, Jupiter will retrograde, Saturn will station direct. And then come December, the end of December, they will square again. I think from memory, it's at 14 degrees. And then when they make their third and final square next year, they will do so in different signs. So this lunation is really setting off this longer term pattern here. So you may become aware of a problem that is going to take a while to figure out, to work through. It's going to take some creative imagining, creative and reimagining, new ways of thinking. Do you want to stay that person in the room that is just got their um, arms folded and, in a boohoo moment because things are changing? Well, we can't stop the change. Or do you want to be that mutable person that decides, well, I could complain that it's cold, or I could just put on a jumper and roll with those punches? So it's really going to be determined on your attitude to this, because there is going to be some upsets collectively, personally, over the next few days. And they may set, whatever happens now may be a piece in the puzzle that sets off this longer cycle. So you really do want to be focusing on right now is your Leo and your Aquarius houses, and to some extent your Taurus one as well. And then, of course, there's the Jupiter or the Gemini and the Pisces houses. So those ones are really tied in. So whatever happens over the next few days in your Leo Aquarius axis will have a longer range influence in the I should say the Pisces and the Gemini houses. So if you can tie in a few of those topics and sort of cast your bow a little bit longer, that's going to give you the insight around this full moon. Do you take the pessimistic, everything's ruined type of energy, or do you adapt and change and go, well, there's some room for improvement for sure, but we're going to look to the things that are working well, double down on those, and maybe have that wisdom, that Jupiter type wisdom of, I think it's the Irish blessing around the idea of knowing what you can change, knowing what you can't, and having the wisdom to be able to decipher that difference. So hopefully that has given you a little bit of insight in how to interpret and work through this crazy few days of astrology. I'm kind of battening down the hatches a little bit personally. Venus is my time lord, so I'm looking for solutions wherever I can find them right now. She's a little beaten up right now, so she's definitely working hard to improve things. So I do try and take the adage of high tides raise all boats. There's a lot of fear porn out there right now. You can buy into that, or you can choose to work on what you can change, what is yours to do in this moment. And I wish you all well through it. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful full moon. Let me know in the comments how this may be impacting you and what is resulting as a result of all of this crazy weather. All right, until next time.